perspective that we generally come from. So in other words, he doesn't have the foundation of that. But I think he can probably pick up on it as we go. Is that, Chris, is that pretty much the question?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, so how does a person, do you all see this? There's another newcomer on there too. Do y'all see him? Do you know who that is?
Who, me? Sorry, the audio wasn't working.
Yeah, that's my nephew. That's Micaiah's. That's Micaiah's baby brother. He's the youngest.
What's up, Edison?
What's up?
Good to see you on.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you remember him, Randall, Michael. Do y'all remember him any?
I used to go over to Mac's house and play games and play in the backyard and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's been a while.
Addison barely out of diapers. And look at him, sound like a radio DJ now. Got that deep voice going, you know.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get back to Chris's question of how does a person know when they're being judged? I'll give just a little bit of context for Addison and Brian Jr., so they kind of get an idea. Of course, that would be a simple question if we were talking about, you know, someone coming up and being judgmental of us and they say something about us, their view of us, something they don't like or things like that, then it's a simple question. Well, it's obvious when you're being judged. But we're not talking about that. We're really talking about a process of the proper process of evaluation, being evaluated by God. And also after that evaluation, there is a prescription, or there is something that God basically says. Right now we're just to give you a context I'm saying God, but he begins to prescribe something after he has assessed and given assessment of where you are. Then he actually says, this is what is needed for this particular situation. We're talking about judge in that context. Does that make sense? And so how does a person know? So let me give a probably challenging question, somewhat of a challenging question. If a person was driving down the street and they had a car accident, or they were doing some carpentry work and they accidentally sliced their finger with a knife or cut their finger with a saw, how do we know if this is judgment or not? Do we understand the question?
Yeah.
if something bad happens to me, is God judging me? Am I being judged? Or am I being recompensed, judged? I did something wrong, and now I'm getting in return, this is what I'm getting for the wrong that I did. Judge. So I'm giving you context. And so the question on the table then is, how do we know when we are going through judgment? I just gave a little bit. I'll stop there and see how you all like to go from there.
Well, I thought on this question, and I have no clue, because this is something that I've also wondered myself. How do you know? And you know, I'm open.
Okay.
Come on, somebody's mic.
I have a clue, but I want to hear other people speak.
Hey, yeah, don't be scared. Put your stuff out there.
No, actually, can you guys hear me? This is Brian Jr.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Actually, this is especially for me, this is a great question. I don't have the answer, but especially the way that my life has been drastically changed for the last 4+ years. With like Uncle Tracy was mentioning about, he mentioned a car accident. That's exactly what I was involved in, and I lost my ability to use my legs, and became paralyzed. Since that time, it's been a lot of different things that I've gone through, and sometimes I do think, like, was God judging me by allowing the situation to happen? And if he was, what was the message that I was supposed to be getting? I do know that it really changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways. It solved a lot of problems that I was dealing with at the time. And I feel like it did end up changing my life for the better. So I'm thankful for it in that particular way, but I'm not exactly sure how, if it was a point of being judged, or even being recompensed judged. Contrary to the pretty face, that doesn't mean I'm I'm perfect, just like in the. So, but anyways, I'll just throw that out there if anybody has any thoughts.
Thank you, Brian, for what you shared. That really adds a lot of spice to the question, and can be somewhat of, makes it even more challenging. The more challenging it is, the more interesting it is. So that's very good.
So,
All right, let me just share just a little bit. First of all, in order to really have a clear picture of when Brian said that, it brought this to my mind. In order to have a real picture of it, you must come from a standard basis. So, meaning, what did God originally intend judgment to do? What was the purpose of judgment in its original? Did it ever start from a result of man's failure? Or was it before man's failure? In order to answer those questions, in order to really answer the challenge. Because what Christianity has done over the years is made judgment just about the result of a failure.
Mhm.
And so we have not had a clear picture of what real judgment is. So I want to make that clear. Did God intend judgment in the beginning before there was any wrong and failure? And what is the I'm going through that so that Brian and Addison will catch up. They'll be able to catch up. See why they're coming from this angle. What is the beginning? What did God intend? Was judgment ever meant to be just when someone does something wrong?
So it's interesting to me. So I've been thinking about this since you brought it up, I think 2 weeks ago. I've been thinking about this question, and I didn't necessarily know I was thinking about this question because instead of judgment, I was thinking about the process of how one is proven. So I had those that I feel they can be synonymous, but with the question of in the beginning, how is judgment used for? It brings me to what you talk about, the son being a judge. And that leads me to say that I feel judgment is and was only for growth, only for, as you were even saying about the remedy for the assessment, the process that you go through in order to receive the remedy is what I feel judgment is. And like you said, what Christianity has almost done is say that judgment comes from a recompense of your sin. So since Adam and Eve sinned way back then, the world just went to this direction. And now, especially now in the end times, we're getting judged harshly because of the sins and the waywardness of the world. And it's interesting, again, a lot of the examples that have been used. So what Brian said, and it makes me think of, so when you describe even like working in construction, carpentry, things like that, made me think of a couple of my other uncles that have experienced some of these things, and the way their outlook on life has almost put them in a place to feel hopeless, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think I'll end it there before I start mixing things.
No, I understood you. What you said was good.
All right.
I understood. You're establishing a part of the foundation of it.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
clear.
So as Randall was talking about what this meeting was established for, it is, like you said, to get to the beginning of how things are supposed to be. So the standard of judgment, the standard of mercy, the standard of grace, the standard of these things, and not the watered down versions that we are taught through different institutions. So religion, school, treat others the way you want to be treated is a way that karma doesn't come back to bite you, right? Because they intertwine karma with judgment, right? So, it's, if you just do good in the world, then good will come back to you. But what Brian shared, I feel can go to show that it's not as simple as that, because judgment in the beginning, what judgment was for man to grow. So Yah did not start to judge after Adam and Eve failed. He had already judged and said, this is good. He had already given his stamp of approval on it. And so, yeah, it gets pretty personal for me, because Uncle Tracy and I had a talk about redemption, something that he spoke about at his brother's funeral or at the wake. And it almost, I feel, goes hand in hand with judgment, because how he explained redemption was, if an accident or something like this occurs, the purpose for it is, and you know, this is as we were talking, but the purpose of it is to open your eyes to the good of a situation. So again, so last week we talked about eternal. We talked about what that actually means. It is a name. It's okay. Okay. So eternal. I feel it goes hand in hand with redemption. It goes hand in hand with judgment, right? So in order for something to be eternal, something to be everlasting, so what we try to call heaven, we say, you know, we can't wait to get to our eternal life in heaven, and we miss what is happening here on earth with the judgment. So I'll try to go back to the front of it. So the sun comes up every day, and it is a type of a judge. Its purpose is not to destroy. Its purpose is to help things to grow. So everything is attracted to light. And so that was the original purpose of judgment, was never because something was bad. It was always because something is good and I want this to be eternal. I want this, and this will be fruitful and multiply.
Very good, Jalen. Did you guys understand what Jalen said? Did you
Yeah.
understand what he said, Brian?
I think so.
So, Addison, did you understand what he said?
Yeah, I think so. I think basically that, so he said that judgment is meant to be for when things are going good and to keep those things going good.
Yes. The original point, good way of saying it, Addison. The original point of judgment is to cause growth, maturity, development, maintaining health. You cannot maintain mental health. You cannot maintain physically. You cannot maintain anything in its a healthy state without judgment. So his original point wasn't coming from anything negative.
Mhm.
And then Jalen related to every morning, every day, the sun comes up and it judges everything, meaning it uncovers, it reveals, and it shows us where our weak point is and where our strong point is. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
That's real judgment. That's real
Yes.
judgment. Now, there are other contexts of judgment, but that's the beginning, the original. If you say, for instance, God is love, you cannot separate that word love from judgment. You cannot separate that word. That word has to be attached to, because if it was without judgment, then it would be without love. If it was without judgment, then the sun wouldn't come up. You would not have light all the time. You have to hear the language in which I'm speaking, and I'm saying it. So I'm speaking Hebrew, the Hebrew context. That makes sense?
No.
All right.
Yes.
Anybody else? The question is, how do we know that we are, when we are being judged? If I were in a car accident, was that God judging me? Am I getting what I deserve? And this is how God judges? That's the question.
I don't want to be particular about words, so this is not why I'm throwing it out. I hope that you guys, it adds to the conversation. So the point when you mentioned Uncle Tracy, when you gave the example of being in a car accident and understanding if we are being judged, just as an example, just as you and Jalen presented Judgment, the sun coming up and clarifying or shedding light on something, what I would say might be particular about words is, I don't have a good word for this other thing, but judgment and result, or judgment and execution, or I don't know, judgment and result, almost like when we were talking about the verse in Deuteronomy where it talks about blessing and a curse and those things being results. Because I think that in a car accident, for example, there can be a point of judgment, or there is judgment, and it is not necessarily the result of the car accident, but something is clarified, or something is being clarified, or being something is being clarified at that point. And so I think one of the most difficult things for me has also been when you talk about, I'm jumping all over the place, but Chris mentioned it. We had conversations about it, about what the first point of judgment looks like in Genesis. And one of the hardest things for me is in really understanding is seeing what God sees, in essence. So where my eye, almost when you talk about eye to eye, but when being in accordance with something, I guess, I don't really know the best way of expressing it, but if I were to get in a car accident, for example, coming to the being to the point to where I could process through something to see exactly the point of judgment that is being what is being judged, that has, that's been interesting. I had an instance of that when we were up on the in the job, when I got in a car accident, and understanding what that was. So I would say that was a point of judgment, understanding and being in alignment with that point of judgment has been difficult.
CJ, what you mentioned when you're saying being eye to eye with God, and then you start going to Genesis, I'm gonna let everybody else talk, but I want to tag on a little bit of what you said. When you're saying being eye to eye, that's really standard. So you're saying, what you're really saying, or what you really mean by that, is that if I could say, I see what he sees. All right. So now, one of the things, just so that everybody's caught up, one of the things that standard is a perfect picture, or a perfect measuring stick. Something to go by to compare whether I am over or under. It has to be accurate. It has to be original. It has to be like I said, original. That's eye to eye. And so when I come in contact with something that is original, that is perfect, that is, and we need to find out, what does perfect mean then? And as I come in contact with this, I can see how short I am. I can see how tall I am. I can see if I'm just right. I'm in the right place. I can see that. That's eye to eye.
Mhm.
It's eye to eye. All right. Anybody else?
Um, I'm on more on the same boat of I when stuff like that happens, when something I would view that something that is bad has happened to me. Um, it it is in that moment hard to understand, or at least hard to view that. Am I being judged? Is this, am I being judged just for something I've done, or because of something? And what I've taken away from it is that whenever those things happen, it's like, okay, why is, or at least what is the purpose of, I guess, the thing that has happened to me? What am I supposed to take away from the thing that has happened to me?
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Everybody keep on hitting that same point, and it's helping me to be able to see something a little bit. So I asked this question. If you were raised during the time of slavery and your father, whether white or black, your father might have been the master who was white. He might be your father, but he took you, and because you are born from a black woman, he took you and he put you out in the fields. So you can look at it that way. Or your father might be black, but yet he's in slavery. And your father, that is black, started telling you that you had to do these particular things or else this would happen to you. If you don't do this, you're going to get beat. If you don't do that, you're going to get stoned or whatever. If you're going to do these things like this, you don't do this, here's the result. Just trying to paint a picture here. And you had, because I want to make a point, your father brought you up, and that's what you understood all your life, that if you do this, here are the results. If you don't do this, here are the results. That's all you have in your head. And that's what you understand about judgment. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm
Yes.
brought up in a home and the basis of my home starts me off with, if you don't do this, or if you do this, here is what's going to happen. You're going to get a beating. What does it do to the mind, and what does it train the mind to think judgment is?
I think it trains the mind to think judgment is a consequence rather than an awakening or a conference with the one who is being judged. It turns judgment into, well, this is what's happening now, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly. How do we? But in order to receive maximum benefit of judgment, of God's judgment, you have to remove that idea. Do you understand what I just said? in order to receive maximum benefit, the thing that the master had ingrained in my mind, what you said, Addison, if he ingrained that in my mind, then in order for me to receive maximum benefit of judgment, righteous judgment, good judgment, then I have to remove that idea that the master had instilled. And as long as I have that idea, I cannot reach the maximum benefit of real judgment.
Mm.
I've got something. As soon as the question was asked, the first thing I remembered was a comment that Tracy made when he said, the highest point of light comes from two contrasting points. And so here you have two pictures of judgment. One is condescending consequences, and the other one is improvement. I know I'm going through judgment whenever I see these two contrasting points starting to accentuate. Let's just say that I'm operating under the church's premise or the slave premise. I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to get whipped if I don't do these things. But let's just say that I'm not even thinking about judgment. That thing just happens to be inside of me. That's my mode of operation. But it's far from the right mode of operation, which also is inside of me. The right kind of judgment is inside of me, but I can't even reach it until I sort through and place judgment on one of those contrasting points. You know you're going through it when that stuff is no longer hidden and it comes to the surface.
Good point, Randall. What it makes me just summarize and say is, it's Randall. One of the points that he's hitting almost is a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. You're not going to be over here looking at God is love, judgment, in the positive, and at the same time have an idea that God is condemning. Yeah, it ain't. He's doing this to me. Though, so one of them has to go.
I'd like to take it a step further. If you have disruption in your life and it's coming to the surface, I have learned to recognize that judgment is at hand. Again, if I have something thoroughly disrupting me, emotionally or whatever, something on the job, whatever it is, I'm not looking at, well, this is a consequence of something I did wrong. I'm looking at it, there's going to be two contrasting pictures. Something is inside of me that needs to be examined. I need to pay close attention. When I'm disrupted, I don't take on a victim mindset. I see it as an opportunity.
It's interesting because and I think CJ kind of brought it up and when he was talking about being eye to eye. When you talk about fear, that's something that I kind of hear going on. So, and me and Uncle Tracy have kind of talked about it a little bit because I don't think I've ever been afraid. And how I'm trying to use that fear or afraid is in terms of consequences never seem to do what they were supposed to, right? So, you know, usually if you get a spanking, you get a whipping for doing something that's out of line, you're going to do something different, you know what I mean? And I was the person that continued to put his hand on the stove, even though I knew it was hot. And so when we're talking about fear, you talk about the two opposing pictures that you can get. And I'll need Uncle Tracy's help, but when he talks about, when I hear him talking about God is love, what I hear is God has no fear. And so what I'm saying is, if we're eye to eye with God, then that is who we fear. And fear is like what we're saying with judgment, with different things like that. Fear no longer has the human interpretation of it. We no longer see it from the victim mindset of there's this almighty being that's out to get me if I don't go to church, if I do X, Y, or Z, I'm gonna get got. I'm getting sent straight to hell. So yeah, that's just something that has been juggling around in my head when we talk about fear and what. Yeah. Because so again, I'm not too knowledgeable in this aspect, but it's like there are different gods. Everyone, you know, so you have the lowercase g gods, and then you have the one true God, the Trinity, the triune, however you describe them. And what people don't realize is you can get caught away from the sun. So just how, you know, they describe our solar system, it's always been said as a negative to be next to the sun. And if in the case that I'm trying to use, the sun is a judge, a certain type of judge, we have to get past all of those other stars, gods, whatever, in order to be eye to eye with the sun. And from that point is the only point that we can see the true of judgment.
You guys have brought up a lot of interesting ideas. My mind is kind of going crazy, so I'll try to condense it. But when Uncle Tracy mentioned the verse, Jalen, trying to connect what I heard Jalen say as well, about a double-minded man. There's the verse in Matthew that talks about the eye is the light of the body. If the eye is single, and the whole body is filled with light, which I think is the same idea, talking about double-minded, divided. There's the verse that talks about cannot serve two masters. And one of the reasons why it's really interesting, because when Uncle Tracy mentioned the sun, even when you talk about what the church is to be to the world, light, that cannot be hid. And you have people on one hand, you talk about again, my mind's going all over the place, so please bear with me. When you talk about judgment and being light, there are one contrasting picture, which is not the same way that Randall was mentioning it, but we had a talk on family group chat a while ago. Jalen probably remembers it, when we talked about judgment. And there was a common belief that you should not judge. But as Uncle Tracy said, that comes from one of the biggest things that I feel like that comes from is misjudgment. And so you have people who in one sense, without having their eye on God, become a judge of where it is their opinion is what is true. Their what they see how they process and conclude on something. It gets into when you talk about there was one person in the group that talked about 10 ways to practice non-judgment. And it was interesting because I talked about how I believe judgment was necessary, and then this person shared like this list of 10 ways to practice non-judgment. I think that where we are today, you can see, especially with some of the younger generations, you can see an extreme of, or a particular face, I will say, of that perspective, which is what your truth. What's interesting though, and you all might not like me for saying this, but it is a particular face or particular side of what was presented previously, meaning that the only way that you get a type of opinion or a type of stance or position that is that pervasive in society is to have misjudgment or the lack of what true judgment is supposed to be. So that is simply to say that through the judgment of the church, for example, it has been my truth. It has been a condemnation because it is not them seeing eye to eye or being in an intimate relationship with God and then reflecting from that point. And so that's where you get the judgmental that Uncle Tracy, when Uncle Tracy was talking about judgmental being judgmental, that's where you can see my truth in maybe a place that you wouldn't have necessarily seen it before. And I mean that just giving the example of people in church, for example, a lot of us have had those experiences who will condemn or who will make judgments without ever being eye to eye with God, in some sense, seems like ever being interested in having that type of relationship with God.
Man, there's so much meat on this. So many points that everybody's bringing up. One of the things that CJ, you really bring it out, and I'm just going to touch on the surface of it, is, first of all, judgment. And I'm going to step back a little bit. God is a father. He is a father. And all fathers are to pattern themselves off of that father. So that means that the man of the house, the father of the house, is supposed to be the judge. He is supposed to judge his family. That means to assess. One of the first places that God started every day when he would judge Adam and Eve, it said that he came and he communed with them in the cool of the day. And I asked the question, usually, when is the cool of the day? Do you think it's night? It's the morning.
I was just about to say the morning.
Yeah, it's when and then the light begins. After dawn, the light begins to come. It's a judgment process. Mm-hmm. It's a process of judgment. And so God would take assessment. The Son takes assessment. And what happens is when something is deficient, it reveals it. When it's deficient, it encourages it. And so a father is supposed to do that with his child. Never start off with rules of don't do. Never start off. The 10 Commandments is not rules of don't do. That's how we read it. But it's contingent on understanding the light. Because the first commandment is understand, hear, O Israel, that word here means understand. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord, and you will not have duplicity, any other gods before me. If you understand oneness or this perfection, you will honor your father and mother. It stays within that structure. That's how it's written. It's not written, don't do this or else. And CJ brought up something. He said, he actually talked to me a little bit about it before men's meeting. He brought up a verse that talks about God after saying what he wanted from them. He said, I set before you a blessing and curse. And the way that it's read is you can choose, he was explaining, you can choose which one. I'm going to choose blessing so I don't get the curse. That is not how it works. It's not a choice. The way these are results. It's saying the way it's written is all the previous verses are saying, if you have this, if you have that, if it's like this, it's like that, and then this is going to be a result, a blessing. If you don't have this, if you don't have that, it don't look like that, it don't come out like that, the result is curse. Does that make sense? We're talking about judgment. So it's all written in that kind of a framework of not a threat of you displeased per se, but it's almost like saying, if you don't put oil in your car, you know it's going to happen. After a while, you're going to be, and it's going to be no good. It's simply telling you instructions, put oil in your car, and so that it will last. Now, if the car breaks down, is it condemnation? Is God, because what we are describing, if I do wrong and this happens to me, is actually condemnation, not judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Did you understand what I said?
Mm-hmm.
It's condemnation.
Can you repeat it? What you were saying between the difference of condemnation and judgment?
Say it again, Brian.
I was saying, I didn't quite understand. Can you say it in other words, what you were saying about difference between condemnation and judgment?
Okay, let me see if I can explain. I'm going to explain it a whole nother way. If you were ingrained, let me say it this way. I'll ask you a question, Brian. If a person has been raped, and that rape has gone unresolved, meaning the fact that they have been raped, but it has never been dealt with, how is that person going to behave that has been raped? Can you tell me?
They'll be mentally scarred.
Okay, mentally scared. Let me say it another way. It's commonly known that they either go homosexuality, they either go because that trauma that they had in their life scars and it causes certain behaviors. Can we all agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. So now, your life has been set by a scar in your life. Now I'm going to rebate. Let's step back a little bit. Let's go over here. If you have been abused or oppressed by a man for 400 years, 300 or whatever you want to call it, and it goes unresolved, what are going to be the behaviors of that oppressed people? Can you tell me?
Um,
I'm saying it
uh,
another way. I want you to
yeah,
understand real clear. Go ahead.
uh, they'll have that mindset of those who oppress them for however long the time period was.
Okay. Would they have a tendency to, because they've been oppressed, would they have a tendency to behave badly?
No,
Yes. That's what you need to understand. If a person has been oppressed and it goes unresolved, the question I have for you is, how can you hold them accountable for their behavior, judgment, if the oppression goes unresolved? That's the question.
you can't. Hold on.
We are saying that what God does is we have been oppressed and there have been some things that have been unresolved,
Right.
but yet he allowed me to have a car accident when this stuff is still unresolved. Do you understand what I just said?
Yeah.
I'm passionate. I want you to understand. Because there's another message in why maybe the car accident. There's another message that God has inside of that. And you have to understand that you had unresolved trauma. And if you have unresolved trauma, then it's automatically going to cause you to behave a certain way. You can't correct that behavior until the trauma is dealt with. That's every human being.
Right.
So again, I share going a little deeper so that you understand that this is stuff that mostly everybody else has heard. I'm going to try to briefly go through it so we can stay in subject. There are 5 sacrifices in the scripture, only 5 in the Old Testament. I'm going to say them Hebrew names, starting from the bottom. Asham, Hatah, Ola, Minka, Slamim. Slamim means peace. So shalom is coming from that same word. It means peace. So think about peace being up here. I got to arrive to peace. But I started at the bottom, and the bottom is Asham. If you want to understand Asham is the darkest place that a person can be or feel. And so Asham in scripture, there are two different types of sin, only 2, Asham and Hatah. All right. Asham basically is if I was an oppressor, a master, or if I was a rapist and I raped somebody, that's Asham. So I am the cause of oppression, that's Asham. Then you go into Hatah. Hatah is I am the one that has been raped. These are 2 types of sin. In scripture, they're called sin and iniquity. Iniquity is if I'm a rapist. Sin is if my behaviors are a result of being raped. Do you understand what I'm saying? If my behaviors are, we're talking about judgment. If my behaviors are a result of being raped, then I ask a question, real simple, real quick. All of you heard me ask it before, but I'll ask it again. On the Day of Atonement, Jesus is coming to atone for our sins. The question that I have is, does he atone for all sin? I'll answer that. The average answer is yes. But it is very interesting that if you look at the details of atonement, the only sacrifices given is for the hata, those who have been raped. It is the sacrifice is not given in the day of atonement for Asham, the rapist. You will see this in Jesus, because Jesus and how he stands against the Pharisees, the rapists, but yet he goes and he helps and heals and repairs the hata, those who have been raped. When he wrote on the ground and he said, "He that is without sin cast the first stone," he stood against the rapist, but he went over here to the one that had been raped and forgave. You cannot judge someone with harsh judgment without beginning to remove the weights of them first. If you judge them without removing the weights, it is condemnation. Did you understand what I said? Brian.
Wow.
If the
Thank you
weights
for
are
that.
still in your life and I condemn you, if the weights are still in your life and Jesus, God, crushes you, it is condemnation. He will remove the weights first. That is God. What's your challenge, Brian?
Find out what my weights are.
Find out what's wrong with what?
I said, find out what my weights are, or help God help me remove them.
Yes, yes, yes. The thing is finding out what those weights are, because those weights are guilt. Things that I feel anytime you say guilt, it's a weight. But guilts are applied oftentimes. The reason why whores go and become whores after being raped is because they feel dirty, guilty, unclean. So what am I going to do? Beat her for being a whore after she's been raped and that has not been corrected? Judgment, God's judgment. And Father, if you were born in a whole house, then a father will continue in judging just to maintain your health. But if you are born in a broken society and broken home and broken, then judgment begins to come over here and it judges those who are oppressed, and it judges in light of trying to make you come out of that mentality. That is real judgment. That's how it works. You have the floor.
What's interesting about judgment to me, from hearing all the things that have been said today, is that Adam's first task, man's first task, was to name the animals or name creation. That is a type of judgment, from my understanding. It is imperative that something is named and it functions according to its name. And it's named by the Father.
Mm-hmm.
Judgment only will return you to your name. Judgment will only allow you to receive mercy.
Yes. Yep. Yes. I like that, Micaiah.
That was good.
Judgment will return you to, you said your name?
Yeah.
That's what Jalen was talking about. when he said redemption.
Mm-hmm.
When he said judgment and redemption, that's what he's talking about. Is it returns you back to your root, your name. What's important to God is the name. Why does he say your name is written in heaven? It's not like we think, well, I done did good and I done did all of this and my name is now written in heaven because I'm doing it this way. It means that I have been redeemed, that the name had been restored. That's Hebrew.
This is a very good, very, very good conversation. This is really, really deep stuff. Every comment has been amazing. I'm at a lost of words. I think about what Micaiah said, and about restoration of the name. That was kind of what I was expressing last week, what happened to me when I really begin to see who I am. And but for a long time, I did not know who I was. I didn't understand my function, which is my name. And so from this journey to now, this is what I was establishing. Took me on this journey to establish something, who I am, my name. And so that's very interesting when Micaiah brought that up. And I was thinking also with something what Randall said, he actually hit on the same thing I had in my mind. He hit on it. He explained it really well. And that is initial point of judgment. How do we know what we're going through judgment? Is when there's a contrast has been formed. The purpose of judgment is to clarify, but that clarification is actually a contrast. Without the contrast, then I don't change. I can't see anything different than what I am seeing at that moment. And so when you're reading Genesis, that's what Genesis is bringing out when it says darkness was on the face of the deep. It's really saying how the whole world, darkness on the face of all man. And so he said, let there be light, it would create a contrast. And so the initial point of judgment is when there is a contrast, when God creates a contrast. And so it is interesting because me and my son was talking about the same thing before we had this conversation. And we were talking about how the earth, Micaiah, someone hit on it, but if you look at the world and how we understand things are in a very dark way or dysfunctional way. We look, for example, if the whole world is in darkness, the whole world thinks a certain pattern, how do you know if your thinking is right? The only way that you're going to know if a contrast is created. And so this is very interesting, very, very interesting conversation.
Hey, Chris, one of the things that what just came to my mind was the purpose of this group is to show that contrast. This is where our authority is coming from.
Right. If I was there, I would give you a holy kiss.
Keep your tongue in your mouth. That's all I can say, man.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's what the same exact thing what I told my son today. That was the whole purpose of the group. It was to create contrast. Because if there is no contrast, if there's ever no contrast, how do you know if what you're seeing is correct. You'll never see anything different unless the contrast is committed. But the problem is, usually, I'm speaking with Tracy. Tracy creates a lot of contrast, but he takes a whole lot of heat for creating those contrasts. But if I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna share this with the group, I told him I would not understand the things that I understand if it wasn't for him creating a contrast and would not move. He wouldn't change. When we created that contrast, he would not move at all. And I would get so angry at him. Man, I wanted to fight him. But that was the only way that I can see what I see right now. That was the only way.
You know that contrast will cause you to stand up. You won't, if you see junk versus food, you can't stand that junk. You have to have the food and you will stand up.
That was the point that I feel like was made with I am the Lord thy God, the Lord is one, is the contrast. If you were to know your name, you have to know that the Lord God is one. That is how you know your name. It is a contrast.
No.
I've been stuck on the word in my head. I've been stuck on the word reflection. I am not by any means roots or foundation, but being in the presence of foundation, I am able to see where I am. It's the measuring stick he was talking about. And so like when I went over to work with Uncle Tracy in Michigan, the first thing, I think it's comparable to the cool of the day. The first thing that when I got there, I was very hyper. I was very, I wanted to challenge. I wanted to be challenged so bad. I wanted to get to work, to prove myself, to do all of these things. But that was coming from a chaotic environment. And that chaotic environment was my own delusion that I was stuck in, or my own head, or not being measured against anything except myself. And so I was stuck in this chaotic feeling. And when I was in the presence of foundation, I was told to receive first, just relax and receive first before I was able to receive the challenge that I was looking for. But before I could receive any challenges or be challenged at all, there was reflection. And so I think reflection comes before judgment. And I think that would be in between the cool of the day and dawn, or when the sun is being shined at its brightest. And I think if we go through that daily, that would be, I think last week, Tracy brought up the virtuous woman being clean and unclean. And I think that ties into going through the process of the Shabbat and remembering the Sabbath. So I've come a long way from when I originally went to Michigan, but keeping in mind that just this last week, I was doubting that I understood anything at all. And so this meeting has helped a lot with just remembering that I will know my name.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
I understand that, Michael. And, I would encourage you to keep on moving forward. And that will be established. I'd also encourage you to be patient, because without patience, and patience doesn't mean, as I said before, wait. Patient means that I am working to prove a particular point. That's where you're here waiting, meaning I have not concluded anything until that point is proven. That is patience. So it's a person who is not concluding before something needs to be concluded or before it should be concluded, but it is doing the work to conclude. Let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If you don't want nothing, you have concluded what you are to be and who you are.
That patience, Michael, is what Tracy told me once, called it discernment. So the word discernment brings that context in the way that he described it.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny that you mentioned that verse, Uncle Tracy, specifically because when you were talking, I feel like that's what I started to get a picture of. So those verses, when we had the previous session and you were talking about in James where it says, "Count it all joy," and it talks about falling into diverse temptations. And it was also interesting because I think you mentioned, and it ties into part of the example that you were speaking about and it was when you were speaking directly with Brian. I think you also mentioned, I had to look it up. It's 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. And it says, there's no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man, but God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. And so that what came to my mind as far as just the idea of like something come up as a picture was when you talked about God's judgment and there being no condemnation. And when you tied in what Jalen was saying about redemption, and it also talks about in James the point of salvation.
Interesting points.
I still got that verse stuck in my head about know the Lord thy God is one. And thinking about how to know something doesn't mean just to look at it and just to be contrasted with it. It means to be one with it. That means that as it moves, you move. It's a dance, as Uncle Frank might say. So to know the Lord thy God is one means that there is no hesitation between you and God. No hesitation. That's where the name comes in. That's when I and the Father are one comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
That's interesting.
That good stuff, Matt. All right, so there's a whole bunch of quiet ones. Let's see, Chris Jr., Shane, Addison, Nate. Where y'all at?
I've been listening. I'm taking it all in. I think that I'm still going through the process of knowing myself and knowing where I stand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm pretty much of the same mind. Oh, but from what everyone has said, it feels a bit more like a refresher course over some things that should have gotten the first time around.
Okay. Shane, what you think? What are you hearing?
Essentially the same thing. I actually wanted to come into this talking about exactly that. Well, somewhat of that, because I'm trying to really understand myself a lot more and where I stand, just like what Edison was saying.
Okay, so what I want to ask you, Shane, is there any specific question that you have that we can answer that would help you understand?
Well, I do have a question, but I'm not too sure how to put it into words, so I wouldn't know how I would say it or how I would phrase it. I've been thinking it's been about like
Just
2-3 weeks. I'm just trying to think about how to even ask that question.
okay. I don't know. I would just say, just put it out there and let us try to work with it. Trust. That's what I would say. And pay attention to how we hear. So this would be very interesting. Say it, whatever, how jumbled up it is, and we will tell you back what we hear you saying. That's what will help you get the question out.
So about a couple of weeks ago, my dad, me and my family, we came back from California from the funeral, my grandmother's funeral. And after we came back, my dad, he had this, I don't know what you would call it, maybe a revelation. He had this, this thrill, a lot of insight that he had got from the trip. And he talked about, how, I guess, self-discovering and how a lot of that was like, he knew who he was, being an Anderson and everything. And I didn't really reflect, because me being his kid, I'm basically, from what he says, identical, like matching how he is. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, is that true or is it not? Because I've conflicting feelings myself, because I don't feel like I am. But then again, I do notice some things that sometimes I could be like that. So I'm not too sure of how my personality is like. Am I the way my father is saying I am, or am I the way I'm feeling? Like, I'm not too sure how to phrase it.
I think it's understood. It's a little fast for me, but I think it's understood. So I'm going to allow, usually who translates pretty well is Micaiah. I also hear from Chris. What did you hear, Micaiah?
It's an identity question. Am I like my father? I don't know who I am. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm my father, but also I don't know who I am, which raises a question for me is, are you in your natural mode of operation or your natural state?
I'd say that I am. I don't feel that I'm forcing myself to feel in a way.
Shane, how did Micaiah do?
Pretty accurate, I think. Then again, I feel like it's accurate, but I feel like there are some things that I haven't said that have been left unsaid. So therefore, it feels like it's incomplete. Accurate, but incomplete.
Okay, so this is what I would say, Shane. That because of your last statement, you need to know that this is a safe place. It said that you have some things that you need to filter out. That's what the first thing that comes to my mind. And feeling safe and having a safe place to filter it out. And when you start filtering all of that out, that's what's going to help you be able to stabilize, have footing, meaning having a surety in certain things. But you can't have a surety or be sure. I'm walking on this, I'm describing walking, but I'm not sure why. You can't until that stuff is filtered out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, mostly.
So do you feel like that fits you or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt, what were you going to say?
I'll say this real quick. And if the shoe fits, wear it. If not, then that's fine too. But I understand for myself and my personal experience that a lot of my younger years, and I'm not that old, a lot of my just becoming an adult years were spent in fear of being some of the things that my father was. And so I wasn't acting naturally. I was pushing against something. When I stopped being able to push against it because of the natural occurrences the natural situations that came into my life, I started to see where my natural mode of operation was. And it was a lot like my father, good or bad, however you want to look at it. But that's what I'm getting at when I'm saying, when I think that we're all getting at when we're saying that you have to feel safe. Because when you feel safe, you'll start to see some of the things that need to get processed and some of the things that you're pushing against or pulling in too hard.
Yeah, I understand that part, but I don't entirely think I'm getting my point across. Like I don't feel like I'm acting in any kind of like forced or non-natural way. I feel like this is as natural for me myself, my personality. I feel like this is as natural as I could probably get. But at that having that said, my dad saying that I'm actually not like this, but I'm a lot like him, and my personality is just like what he says, an Anderson, which is very argumentative. You got debative, and all these things like that. Very masculine, as he will put it. And so, and I compare that to myself, and I think to myself, am I like that? It's not. I don't have a problem with being that way. There's no problem. I just don't know if what he's saying is how if that's how I'm like. I don't know. I really don't know how to say it.
And I would say
Go ahead, Chris.
I'd say that I very much definitely do understand what Shane's trying to say, because I often, though I might get this wrong, I often think the same way, because our dad came home from that trip and was saying the stuff that he was saying, that hey, how I am is how you are. How I know and understand myself now is basically exactly on how you operate. And in that, they're like, well, yes, I can see, at least in my case, yes, I can see how I do share a lot of your similarities, a lot of his personality, but at the same time, I don't. I have my mom's side, I guess, and somewhere in there is my own way, my own personal identity, but coupled with the fact that, well, is what my dad said true? Is what he said, that this, because I am this way, this is how you are? Is this true? Is that how I operate?
Yeah, actually, I'd say that's a very well more refined way of how I was trying to say it. And that reminds me of what he said, or my dad said earlier, a bit earlier. To know yourself as a person you really need to know who your parents are or who your parents were, you know, how they operate. And so that really, like, you know, reflects, again, bounces back off of what the same thing he just said about how, you know, he's this way, my dad's this way, and that means I'm like that too. Then again, I don't feel that way. But then he says, he explained it to me earlier, way back when I first had this conversation with him, that it could be because of like this repression. Like he repressed that in me so that I wouldn't be like that. Like I wouldn't be the way he was. Because at that time when he was doing that, during the process of repression, of oppression, I guess you could say, he was trying not to be that way as well. So I guess now I think about it, he's pushing that, he was seeing that in me. So he's pushing it, so he started pushing it down so that I wouldn't turn like that. And I guess inevitably I didn't, or I feel like I haven't, but he says that it's in me. I just had to bring it back out again. Because he says that the reason why he did it to me is because his mom did it to him. And so, you know, he had felt bad about it. So that kind of thing, like a cycle.
Okay, so one of the things that I would say, and what I normally do here is when I am working with a family, I have a tendency to, at some point, reflect on, so that you all understand this. I have a tendency, so for instance, Jalen, CJ, their family, when I get together and we have a discussion, I have a tendency to, at times, to reflect on, if we have a family meeting or something, I will reflect on the parents, I will reflect on the father, I will reflect on the mother. I might reflect on you, the children. I give a constant, because I'm judging them. And so what, just the basis, and then I would ask Jalen maybe to say what he sees from it, because he's experienced it. What I'm trying to say is, your mother and father, Shane, has needed and been in need of judgment. But what helps you to complete these things is hearing, being in the midst of seeing them experience judgment. Did you understand what I'm saying?
I don't think so. Not very much.
Oh, okay. I don't know if someone can explain it.
I can try. So okay, because this is it. Okay. So what I was hearing, Shane, Chris, Addison, and what I have, as you said, experienced is competition, right? That's what I feel stops anyone from knowing who they are. I was telling CJ this about you, where it's like there are times that I've almost felt in competition with you, and what it was. So, you know, Randall bringing up the contrast, or him and Chris talking about contrast, bringing clarity. And when Chris mentioned your position, and that's even what you were just explaining about. But okay. So I'd almost felt in competition at times with you. And the only thing that allowed me to see that was your position, was what you were saying, what you were doing, your judgment. Okay, so competition. Again, what we've been taught, and this is kind of what I was hearing Shane say when he was talking to me about his dad, suppressing different things that he saw in his son, and the reason for it. So, you know, you have a verse that says, man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. And how we hear that has been a competition. But what the foundation that you have laid in this entire thing is Abba Father, who God is, and that every household, every man has the duty of becoming Abba Father, or seeing eye to eye with Judgment, with that reflection, in order to help his family grow, and so eternal. So I was saying all that to say, one thing that I had to see from reflection, judgment, however you want to phrase it, was that what is happening now is for the branches. So for the younger people, however you want to describe it, for the branches to be the branches. And so Uncle Tracy brought up, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." And when you think about a tree, what we've been talking about is the root or the foundation. And then you have the trunk. And then you have the branches. You have three in one. None of them are separate. So when, your dad was saying things like, he sees things in you that he sees in himself, and how you called it almost a revelation, how what the Sabbath is helping him to see is what his position has to be as a root, if that makes sense. And so I'm hoping that this can kind of clarify. So a house divided against itself, CJ brought up the verse about oneness, the eye needing oneness. A tree cannot be separate from the root and still think that the trunk and the branches are going to survive and live. So your dad is at a different stage in life than you are. He's a root. He has a family that he has to own. He has to roll over. And what his job is to teach you how to do that. And so it's interesting what's being brought up, because this is kind of what I've been thinking about a lot, in terms of we're getting information today that we've never gotten before. And what it can almost make you have is that split mind, or that contrast, and you stay in that contrast instead of seeing that the process of the contrast is to clarify. I might have just made it worse.
That makes sense.
Yes.
As children, and so this is kind of back what I'm trying to say. What Uncle Tracy is teaching everyone in here is how to be a root, the foundation of a tree. Yet we're not all in the quote unquote same place in life. And so he explains that in life you go through stages, and you are supposed to be prepared for the stages when they are presented to you. So Michael brought up the virtuous woman. And that's something, again, we don't have a foundation for. We are learning how to be who we are to be with the help of those that are before us, if that makes sense. So your dad is in a different place than you are, but he is trying to uplift you. He wants you to be where he was not at your age, if that makes sense.
So one of the things, I'll connect with what Jalen said, Shane, which helps, is that everybody has to look at it. The Father is the root of the tree. This is, if throughout Scripture, this is the framework. The Father is the root, the mother is the trunk, and the children are the branches. No matter what, Shane, whatever that root sends up that tree, it goes throughout the whole tree. So if it's in rich soil, it's going to send whatever soil it's in, is going to send those minerals and all of that through that soil that they're in. All right. If it's in poor soil, this is what Jalen is hitting. It's going to send up those minerals. No matter what, you are going to see lacks in that tree if it is not, the root is not doing the job that it's supposed to be doing, or if it is not capable of sending up what it needs to be sent up. Are you following me?
Trying my best.
Okay, so as the father, if you were to look at where he was prior, a year ago, a few years ago, how he handled you, how he behaved, all of those kind of things, then you would say, was he in good soil back then? Not according to the way that he handled things, or not according to the way he ruled his house. Does that make sense? Am I making
Yes.
sense? Then we say, now, is he in the same place as where he was now? Did he switch? Is he now in better soil? Because no matter what, the Father is going to send up minerals, wherever he is going to come up from the Father. And especially as long as you live with him, it's going to come up no matter what. That is law. And so if he's in a good ground, it's going to affect you. If he's in a bad ground, it's going to affect you. All right, now let's step over here. If the root does not do what it's supposed to do, then what's going to happen is the trunk is going to actually interact with that too. So it's not going to provide or produce or be healthy. Does that make sense? Then the whole sickness goes through the whole family. Does that make sense? And if the father's in rich soil in the whole richness goes through the whole family. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your struggle? The reason why I said what I was really saying was that you needed to see your parents go through judgment. You needed to see, and that does something for you as a child. You need to see your parents. So when your dad was over here in bad soil, was he going through judgment? Did he have something to assess, or was he just acting without his own opinion, his own thought, without light or judgment? Did that make sense?
I'm getting some parts of it.
All right. So, and I'll let everybody else sum that up. Every human being has to, the biblical structure, when you went down from high priest to the regular priest, those who sacrificed, the made sacrifices, some of the priests wasn't able to go so far, and you go all the way down to the family unit, all the way down to the child. Its whole structure and its health was built off of a judgment system. Let me tell you something. Read the story of Job, just as an example. If you read the story of Job, you find out that Job is going to make sacrifices for his children. What you have to understand is that Job assessed where his children were in order to make those sacrifices. I'm talking about judgment now. If their children fall short over here, if it fell short over there, Job was going to make sacrifices for those particular lacks. That's what a root does when it sends up and it determines what the need of its branches are. Did you understand what I said?
Mm-hmm.
That's the story of Job. That's a part of the story of Job. What you also need to understand, and I'll stop here, is that as the Father makes the proper adjustments and sacrifices, that's what causes the health of a family. That's what causes them to know who they are or to know their value. But if the father has very little value, what is going to display in each child and each member of the house is very little value, guaranteed. Nothing breaks that code. No household breaks that code. So the reason why Jesus came at a time where the value of Israel was at its lowest point. So there's so much that I would have to explain now. We don't even have time. But it make me go into Sukkot and what a Sukkot is and what a sukkah is. And it means, in short, it's a complete house. We read in the Bible that he was born from a manger, but the real word is Sukkot. That means that it could not be a divide between Joseph and Mary. If there was any breakdown or divide, then Jesus would not be born from a whole house. We're talking about a tree now. We're talking about the structure of a tree, healthy, whole, complete. I'm just going through it real quick. So Sukkot is not even taught in church. But as you understand the roots of it, you can see a family unit, how it operates and how it maintains its health and its value. In Israel, you had a plot of land. You could not sell that land. Your name was tied to that land. And whether that land that if you sold it, if you were to use it to borrow, the person that you let him, you lent it out or whatever, or you borrowed money from your land, they could only keep you under that for 7 years. After that, it goes back to your name because that land has something to do with your health and the healthiness of your family. So I'm going through, it's highly detailed. The Bible is extremely detailed, much more than what we've ever really realized. The name, your family name is tied to that. So the next point that I was going to make was, have you ever heard of the firstborn blessing? That is after the father gets too old and the mother gets too old, the firstborn in spirit takes over the family estate, not to be benefit, but it means he becomes the judge. And it passes down so that the family stays whole and healthy. This is the structure of it. It's highly detailed. Now, I don't want to bore you all, but trying to answer, trying to help you to understand, Shane, what helps you understand is part of what your dad is saying, no matter what you can stand on is this. As my dad, if he is in bad soil, that has impacted my life. If he is in good soil, that has impacted my life and become a part of me. Either way, bad or good. If it's bad, then there's something that you can start doing about it. There's things that you do to actually erase those things. So for instance, if your dad's behaviors were abusive and he was very abusive, all right, that is going to have it come up in your life as trauma. It is going to cause you to behave a certain way. You can erase that through certain ways. You don't have to have the identity of an abusive father. If you understand what I'm saying. But no matter what, I'm telling you, if the root is in a bad place and he becomes abusive, overbearing because of the place that is in, it's going to show in you, no matter what. Or if he's in a good place, it's going to show in you, no matter what.
I really wouldn't mind speaking to this. All this tree talk has got my mind going crazy.
All right, we're gonna shut it down pretty soon. So
it won't take long.
Go ahead.
Dealing with tree health the first thing you do is expose the flare roots. The flare roots is where the trunk and the roots come together. If you see the demonstration between mom and dad, this is where identity starts to develop. Whenever I'm diagnosing a tree, one of the words that we use is decline. So when spring comes, the healthy version of the tree will always come out in the middle of March, and the leaves have a dark green color. But where the tree has had a deficiency, where the trunk and the roots meet, or the ground, the soil itself is no good, you'll see that the leaves will come out ruddy. They're not quite so developed, and there's a state of decline, a yellowing of the leaves. All of this has to do with development. When I hear you speak your challenge, the first thing I think is identity crisis. If you have good father roots and good trunk together, exposed, vulnerable, transparent, this is where you draw from until you get your own experiences. You draw from that. It's okay if you don't have identity. Sometimes in the middle of the winter, there are no leaves, but you ain't dead. Stuff will develop. And that's all I got to say about that identity crisis.
So Shane, I don't want you to feel at all. A lot of my passion is really encouragement. I want you to understand that. And it's not just talking to you. I want everybody to get that foundation, that this is what impacts us. I think what Randall said, very clear, very good. This is what impacts every human being. Is where we are in America right now is there's a huge lack of father judgment that is not even operating in the homes of today. And so you see high levels of decay. That's almost in every home, you're going to see that. So I think it's important to understand that, the foundation of that. Anybody else before we start shutting it down?
No, I just want to say I really, really, really appreciate everything that was said in this meeting. Randall said some really, really interesting, powerful things. Tracy, CJ, Michael, everyone. I'm just really in awe of this session. Tracy, I really see. Well, you know, there was a time when me and Tracy had a deep falling out, and that was actually a time when I was being judged. And judgment comes in a season. Every season there's going to be a time of judgment, and I was in season, and I was actually in my 30s. I think it was mid-30s. And anyhow, I just was done. I quit talking to him for years. And during that time, my whole life turned upside down. I was issues with the Church of God. Me and my wife, had actually separated during that period. My mother had passed not too long ago. Moana, my brother's wife, had passed. My whole life was turned upside down. I was, having problems with my job. And anyhow, I did not really go through that the way I should have. And so it took years and years later, it wasn't really until my death of my my brother that really got me seeing some things, and I started making some changes in my life. But through all that, I can see how the disconnect between me and my sons, I can see the effect of not going through judgment, not opening myself up to it. And so I have been in with every ounce of my being, a pursuit to restore something. And I'm being vulnerable with this group. It is on my mind every day. It's my general conversation with my wife is talking about restoring my house. And and me participating in this group is, it's creating contrast. A lot of concepts that Tracy speaks, you cannot get you're not going to get this in a religious world or in general conversations with people. But so being part of this group, Tracy makes a concept, and you get CJ, Randall, Jalen, and different ones begin to expound it, and you get a real beautiful picture. But it takes time for that concept to develop. But if you give it time, you begin to see something, and you really see something. You get a revelation of something. And so this has been my journey, my experiences. We have these conversations. It never stops here when we get it never stops here in this session. It always, a week, 2, 3 weeks later, I get something really big. And I see something, a contrast being created. And this is how we grow. And through these periods of light, darkness, light, darkness, light, darkness, going through this, you see contrast. So this is my journey. And I'm just speaking from my heart. I just really appreciate, everyone's comments today. I really got a lot out of this group.
Thanks, Chris.
Man, I want to know how this is hitting Nate and Brian.
No, it was great. I'm really glad that I was able to jump on for the first time, and got me some things. Got me thinking about some things, especially that firstborn blessing you were talking about, and especially like how important it is for fathers to go through judgment. Because I'm a father and my son is 7. And, got a little family, so I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle of everything that you're talking about. So
That's good. I know you well enough, Brian. You'll be chewing on this for a minute.
yeah, I will.
Yeah. So Nate, does this kind of stuff cause you to think for a minute?
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
No.
Crank it up.
Now, yeah, now we can just pick your voice up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's a lot of things that I'm not really understanding just yet. I guess I'm still working on a foundation. That's like the point that I'm at right now. But I always take apart like little nuggets and things like that really help me. So I think the biggest thing today, amongst everything, would be the talk about patience. And when you're concluding things when you should be in the process of concluding things. And I guess like an oversimplification of that would be like, you could just be in a conversation with someone and you think you know where they're going, so you're like interject. And that's like a lack of patience, you know what I mean? And applying that over life and things like that in different areas that you're growing, when you conclude things, when you should be in the process of concluding things, I think that'll be something that I'll be thinking about in terms of like how I do that normally. So that was pretty big for me today for sure.
Good. It's good.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Nate. I wish I would have gotten more of an opportunity to allow you to kind of share what the areas that you are not understanding, because we want everybody to be able to move along together and really understand the structure of what we're talking about, the foundation of what we're talking about. These points are very foundational points. And if these points that we're talking about are not understood, then it is like building your house on sand. It is like building your house with straw, not on a solid foundation. So we try to establish those kind of things. Judgment is a huge part of our health, our maintaining health, all of those things. Nobody can do it without it. So it's a massive part. It's something that really needs to be understood.
I think I've been in that. I've been thinking about judgment a lot. I've been trying to figure out what judgment is to me and how judgment can come to me in different forms. Like, say, if someone says something to you that seems condescending, is that judgment, or is that just me having a problem that I have that I need to uncover? Just kind of finding out what is judgment and what is just not.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Addison. That's a good question. If we need to go through this topic some more next week, we can. Just real quick, I really like your question, Addison. I would say, in partially answering your question, what part of the foundation of what we're trying to establish is, number one, identity. The identity of every member in the family, not the wife, the mother, so to speak, but the identity of the children come from the father. The identity of children come from the father. This is a basic biblical point. And so that's one of the things we're trying to establish. If the father judges, then he can have a healthy family. If he fails to judge correctly, he cannot. All right. I'm saying this to you, Addison. Now, if you went through as a child proper judgment, you would automatically, when you're outside with other people, you would automatically be able to identify wrong judgment. Did you understand what I said? If I have not had proper judgment out in my home, it is difficult to identify when someone is judging me incorrectly or correctly.
Yes, I understand what you mean. It's more like what someone was saying about how the father is the root of the tree, and when the soil is bad, then that's just going to affect the branch and how the branch looks and acts.
Yes. You understand that point?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. That's good. Just work with that. And as we go on talking and different things like this in this meeting, a lot of things become a lot more clearer, like Chris said. Sometimes it takes time for people to really, really adjust to the language.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate this meeting. I appreciate all you guys. You guys are awesome.
All right. We
Great
appreciate
to have you
too.
on, Addison. Good to meet you.
Let's see.
All right, who wants to close?
I don't,
CJ,
but
can you give a summary?
Oh, I was just about to say I'll see you guys next week. He said close. Let me see. Trying to bring everything together. So today we talked about understanding when you are being judged. I think it was also clarified over the course of the meeting where judgment comes from. So part of what I heard or what I understood was when we talked about Genesis, God being judge, Father, and also in one sense understanding his judgment as a point that we as men in our families and our homes, that is how we should pattern ourselves. I also got the point of when you talk about healing from the misjudgment and traumas that we've experienced in life, how to go through those. And yeah, I guess those were the main points that I had. So hope that is adequate for a summary.
That's good. That is very
Real
good.
quick, I just have a question before everybody got off. For the people who have been here for a while, Jalen put out the podcast name in the group chat, and I was wondering if we could get any feedback on that, or if that's good enough. That's a good name.
Micaiah, ask it again.
Jalen had put out the podcast name that we came up with. I think it was a week ago in the group chat, and we were wondering if that was good or if we needed to reassess.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's good enough for me. I'm not picky, so I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, I'm the same on that. I know Makai and I talked about it before, and I basically said that I don't have an opinion on it in that sense. So I'm good with whatever was presented, whatever you guys came to the conclusion on.
Mhm.
I don't remember it, but I remember you mentioning it to me. I'm actually about to look it up real quick.
A rose by any other name still smells.
Come on, man. Come on. Oh man.
All right, well, thank you all for your input. We're gonna start putting videos. We're starting up again today.
All good.
Good.
All right.
All right.
If you all are putting this on, then edit it. And I hope, Brian, you feel, if first of all, since they're new, we need to find out from them to see if they're comfortable. Sometimes what we had done is we had posted some on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel and we posted on YouTube. So if you all feel comfortable, since you're new, Nate, same thing with you. If you're uncomfortable with it, then we won't, Addison, we won't put this one on. But sometimes we put it on there for other people to gather information, or if there's questions, things like that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Personally.
Actually, I didn't really say too much today, so I wouldn't want to stop you guys from putting it up, but I probably wouldn't want to be put on.
Okay.
I'm all right with it. Sorry, my bad.
Okay. No problem. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week, and enjoy your week. Remember, I'm saying this for everybody to understand. Remember that the Sabbath really is, one way of looking at it is we are all going through the same event. We may be interpreting it differently, but we're all going through the same event at the same time. So whenever we come to the meeting, we have something to share and we try to find how the different points connect, and it'll make a full picture. We're all going through the same event at the same time. We're just looking at different angles of it from a different perspective.
Mhm.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Next week.
Well, bye.